everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Market Like a Mother, the podcast by Radiant Marketing, where this season we will be debunking marketing myths. And in this episode, we are going to be debunking the myth that email marketing is dead. It's going to be Karen Cummings, founder and CEO of Radiant Marketing, and me, content strategist Lauren. And if you want to read some extra bonus tips about email marketing, head over to radiantmarketingaz.com/blog for some behind-the-scenes tips that you won't get in our podcast episodes. Hey, Karen, how are you?
Hey, good, Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm good, and I'm super excited to get into another myth with you today. I feel like we have a really good one that I hear all the time today.
Yes, I am excited about this one because we do a lot of this, and I think it's relevant to pretty much any business that exists right now.
Absolutely. So that is the myth that email marketing is dead. I feel like I hear people say this all the time. I hear this reference in, marketing journals and publications. But we want to talk about why we don't think it's dead. And, it's something we might have even said ourselves in the past, but we like to think that instead of email marketing being dead, it's how we do marketing that has changed. So we're very excited to kind of get into that today and give our tips on how we think you could kind of change your marketing over time to still include email marketing as one of your core strategies.
Yep, absolutely. I think that if you feel that it's dead, you'll shy away from it. And really, there's some stats to prove that this is one of the most effective channels you can use for your business. There was a litmus of 500 companies that showed 35% of companies see a $10 to $36 return for every dollar spent on email marketing. That used to be $7, right? So this is actually just getting more and more effective. So I'm super excited to talk about how businesses should be leveraging it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't help but think back to the previous week when we were talking about the myth that marketing moves too fast. And a lot of the things that we touched on is how fast algorithms change. And I feel like that's where email marketing can remain that constant for you because you have these social platforms that aren't owned by you and these algorithms are changing and these platforms are even at risk at going away at times. But email marketing, that is your own list. And I feel like that's so important to remember that you have control of that. It's fully in your control. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely something I know we all like control, right? So something we have a little bit more control over. That's something to consider as you look at your marketing mix.
Absolutely. So just again, thinking about these pain points here, when I hear people say that email marketing is dead, I feel like a huge one, and this one definitely resonates with me, is inbox overwhelm. I feel like I get 1 million emails a day. Karen, I feel like as founder and CEO of Radiant, I can't even imagine you probably get so many more than I even do.
Yes. Sorry. I was taking a sip of my coffee. Yeah, for sure. And I think that you never want to be that company that has that individual thinking, oh my gosh, another email from, so-and-so. So inbox overwhelm is real. And we want to be keeping that in mind when we craft our emails and decide on things like the cadence and the content and the urgency of what we're communicating. So yes, I've got lots of inbox overwhelm over here.
So if you don't hear my reply for 24 hours, that's why I'm going through the big inbox. I think too, people feel so excited about social media and where social media is going. And from a marketing standpoint, I feel like it has just taken over and it's kind of become people's primary focus. But again, like I said, those algorithms change, those platforms come and go, like we've seen with Vines, Twitter turning into Threads. There's so many changes there. So I think it's interesting to look at email marketing as, again, like that owned media for you and that owned strategies. And I think there's an assumption too with social media that people don't want to read longer content. We're living in a world of quick hit videos, of short captions, of short messages online. And we looked up some stats here for this too. And the average user attention span is 8 seconds in 2025, which sounds crazy. And that declined from 12 seconds in 2000. So that's actively going down. And I feel like obviously social media plays a large part in that. So I feel like that immediately deters people from thinking, I don't want to write this email. People aren't going to read it. But again, we've seen that that's not always the case.
Yeah, that's the scary thing about statistics, right? I mean, they're good and bad because we can understand kind of general information about user behavior, but then your community and your audience might behave differently. And this goes back to one of like the core marketing principles of understanding your audience, right? So if you know your audience and you're communicating content and information that they will find valuable, then they're going to read it. So I just like think on emails that I do like to receive and why I like to receive those. And I think those are the ones that are doing that best. So, for the longest time, I've been a follower of Marie Forleo. David C. Baker is an agency consultant that when their newsletters come through, I mean, sometimes I even like star them, save them until I can like grab my coffee and sit down and really enjoy them. So that's what we're striving for, right? We want our newsletters to be a bright spot in someone's inbox and something that our audience is looking forward to. So there is definitely an opportunity to do that. And in both of those cases, the examples of David C. Baker and Marie Forleo, they send long emails, right? Like a lot of times the copy is pretty extensive. There's a lot to read. And they get great read rates because their audience wants that information. So yes, like balance the statistics for sure with what you're doing for your business, but until you're testing how email performs for you and understanding your audience, then you won't be able to make super informed decisions. So definitely make sure you're getting that information out there to understand how your audience responds.
Absolutely. And today we're going to give you some framework of, these key things that you need to keep in mind when you're crafting email content. But before we dive into that too, I want to note that people often compare the stats that they're getting on social media, the likes, the comments, the engagement, to their email open rates or their reply rates, and kind of get disappointed when those numbers are lower. And something that we really value at Radiant is keeping a clean list. So don't get frustrated with the unsubscribes. Like that doesn't necessarily equal low engagement. You want a clean, engaged list, of people that are actually reading your email content. So it definitely, before you even listen to our framework and you're kind of keeping these things in mind, remind yourself of what we're actually looking for when it comes to measuring how successful your email marketing and content is.
Absolutely. I think, when it comes to evaluating the effectiveness of email, it might change a bit, depending on your business. But in the end, I think, always tracking back to like the core metric. So that might be booking consultations if you're in the healthcare service or professional service, and evaluating, from that, how many of those initial meet and greets or consultations resulted in an actual closed customer, client, patient, and really focusing on those core metrics, just like in social. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's great to get likes, but is your social channels or are your social channels driving real impact for your business? So I think we can get carried away with some of the more surface level metrics, and just like we can with email. And that's where I think it gets a little tricky too, because with like the recent privacy updates and cookie updates, things like open rates became less predictable in terms of accuracy when we're evaluating things. So a lot of you may have seen, if you're using an email marketing provider like MailChimp or HubSpot, your open rates dropped significantly when that change was made. And your open rates likely did not actually change in reality, but the metric changed based on the tracking. And so if you were looking exclusively at that metric, you could be super discouraged, right? You went from like a 40% open rate to a 10% open rate. But again, if you're looking at those core important metrics is when you'll see like, okay, my open rate, quote unquote, dropped, but I'm still seeing the same revenue or the same number of kind of those, those consults or whatever that demo booked, those types of things coming from email. So yes, like look at the whole picture, pay attention to the important metrics, and keep your finger on the pulse of what your audience wants, and you'll see some good results from your email.
Absolutely. Everyone who saw their open rate drop is listening to this and breathing a sigh of relief now. They're like, okay, it wasn't just me. I know, I'm sure everyone probably felt that, with all those new privacy things coming out, seeing that drop. So everyone could have a collective moment of relief here.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting into the framework now. So we identified 4 building blocks of strong email marketing. Again, our goal is we always want to give you those tangible things that you could be applying right at your own agency, right in your own work, kind of right away. So things that you could even do as early as today. So we identified, again, 4 building blocks that we really want you to take a look at. And the one that we identified as being the most important, in our opinion, was strategy. So the why. The purpose of your email, what value does it provide, what problem does it solve, really what are you trying to accomplish? Because if you don't have that clear foundation, really everything else in your email isn't going to be pointed and it's not going to help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And Lauren, you and I and the team just went through this exercise again with our newsletters because I don't think that this is always like a one and done. I think that your objective or your why might change a little bit. And it's always nice to revisit that and make sure that you're aligned and that you're still, the newsletter is still serving the purpose you want it to. So this could be things like, is the newsletter designed to entertain, to educate, to inform? There's very specific things you can design your emails to do. And then you want to make sure you're delivering on that so that that expectation is set right out the gate for your viewers or readers, and then it's consistent experience. They come to look forward to it, to understand what's coming, and that is, I think, too, what creates a lot of that connection, that continued open rate, the engagement on those newsletters is that why, for sure. Just like anything in marketing, right? Like, what is the why behind this? What are we trying to accomplish, and tying your work to that goal.
Right. And you and I even talked about this yesterday in terms of this applies to so many things, even like blog content and everything is really always starting with that why is so helpful and important. And I think something to note too is your why could change. So I, as content strategist for Radiant, I write a kind of a weekly check-in email that goes to our subscriber list. And from where it was when I first started it a year ago, it was really kind of more at the point to entertain. And we've shifted that why over the past year and made it more of a informational, educational, giving topics in the news and our takes on marketing topics over the past few months. So I think too, you could always pivot and change. And just because you kind of start your newsletter with a certain why, or you start your emails with a certain why, you could adjust to the needs of yourself and the needs of your audience too. So I think always remember that there's opportunity for change if needed as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you just think of yourself as a human and how you change and evolve over the years, right? So all of the people reading your newsletter are humans as well. And our needs and our desires, our challenges change. And of course, as a brand, you're likely addressing very specific things for that audience with your solution. But the way that you're addressing it, the way you're talking about it, that can all change as well.
Absolutely too. And kind of capitalizing and going into more of like that human aspect of marketing, I feel like everyone wants to preach authenticity and wants to be authentic. But especially in email marketing, trust and relationships are so important in nurturing those, not just kind of doing it in a performative manner, but email works when people believe you're being real with them. So that's something that you really, really, really want to focus on. And again, that goes back to the why as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of speaks to the examples I referenced earlier, is that trust and that relationship is built also by the specific types of content you're sharing. So if I can read this newsletter and be like, wow, was he or she inside my head when they wrote this? Like, how do they know me so well? I think that's where you're like really start to build some trust, because they're providing you with exactly what you want or need. So this kind of ties to, a common question that we get from clients or prospects about purchasing email lists. And I know, opinions can vary widely on this, but typically our advice is, if you're struggling to get in front of the audience that you're trying to get in front of, purchasing a list can be helpful, but we would still encourage you to filter that list, to still get them to take the action of subscribing before you just load them into your system and start sending them email newsletters or emails. So a way to do that would be through advertising, right? So load your list into your advertising platforms to get your ads in front of them. They can engage with the ads and then move to the website, subscribe to your blog, whatever the path looks like for them. Because then they're still opting in. It's still by choice. It's still can spam compliant. And it's giving you that clean list, like you talked about earlier, Lauren, which is so important, right? Like, who cares if you have 10,000 subscribers if only 500 of them actually want your information and are potential buyers? So yeah, that trust and relationship too can be damaged by spam filters and purchase lists and a few other more technical pieces too to consider.
Absolutely, because sure we've all been there too. I look through my email inbox sometime and I'm like, I know for a fact I did not sign up for this specific newsletter, these emails that I'm receiving from a company. So I think too, to your point of advertising your newsletter, once you get those purchase lists, that alone is building trust right off the bat. You're not adding them to lists that they didn't necessarily think they were going to be added to. I mean, everyone has had that moment where they see an email in their inbox and they're like, how did I get on this list? So that, I think, right off the bat is a great way to build trust and kind of, like you said, help keep your list clean. So definitely super important as well.
Yeah. And I mean, time and again, we'll see, new clients that start with us that have had purchase lists in the past that are in their system. And in the end, almost always we're filtering those lists out because they're not doing anything for us. They're not adding any value. Those contacts aren't opening, clicking, purchasing. So you might spend all that money to purchase that list. And then in the end, just have to trash it anyways.
Right, exactly. And going back to that building trust, I think one of the biggest things that builds trust is our next, pillar or building block that we're giving you is consistency. So showing up on that regular cadence automatically is building trust because your audience, your readers are expecting your newsletter in their inbox once a week or whatever the cadence that you chose is. And that alone is, building that trust, even if it's on a subconscious level. But I feel like everything we talk about in marketing to an extent is always consistency. So if you're going to do something, consistently do it, commit to it. I know you're a big fan of a lot of these newsletters that you get, Karen. Like, imagine one week it didn't show up. You would notice because you find that information valuable. So you want, your reader to trust that you're going to be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when people hear consistency, it kind of scares them away, right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to be sending an email twice a week? And that is not at all what we're suggesting here. It's the consistency in that cadence, whether that is weekly, monthly, quarterly. So depending on your type of business, you might not have enough information to be getting in front of people, or depending on how your buyers engage with you too. So if it's something that's like an annual renewal, or if you have like a monthly subscription, you want to keep them engaged, you want to be sending content more often, but there's not always a need to send something, say, weekly. So definitely look at, first and foremost, the value that you're able to provide with your content to start to decide how often you should be sending it. And then, of course, almost just as important is, what can you truly commit to? So if you're a solopreneur and it's just you drafting these emails, like, what do you feel comfortable committing to sending? And definitely, like, sink into that feeling and make sure that you're being true to yourself and like what you can accomplish, because the last thing you want to do is like be like way overly ambitious, be sending like a weekly email for 6 weeks, and then you're completely burnt out and you have to stop and you take like a 12-week hiatus or something. So I think the consistency is super important, but then just remembering that cadence can be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to the emails that I do. So I do a weekly email, like I mentioned, for Radiant. And I feel like one of the most rewarding things for me has been when we've had a client come forward and say that they enjoy receiving it. So, that's one person right there who's noticing when that's in their inbox on a weekly or whatever that consistent basis is. So you almost have to think too of like, oh, what a letdown it would be, for this person who's reading my emails and enjoys them to all of a sudden stop getting them. And I know that's definitely a motivator for me, especially after getting to hear in person that, someone enjoyed my email newsletters that I was sending. So I always try to use that to motivate people.
I know. Well, and like we could do a whole episode on perfectionism, or maybe a whole series. But that speaks to that too, right? Like you're kind of denying the world, your audience, like whatever it is you're here to create and provide them with, if you get too caught up in the details and you don't, hit send. So definitely, committing to the consistency and that cadence can help you overcome that perfectionism too. It's like, hey, I promised myself, I promised them I'd be sending this on this cadence, so I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to let the wording of this particular sentence or the placement of this image or whatever it might be stop me from sharing what I have to share with the world and impacting the lives I have, the opportunity to impact. So don't deprive your audience of the content you could share with them.
Absolutely. And our fellow perfectionists, let us know if you want maybe a bonus episode this season on perfectionism, because we would love to speak on that as well. I think definitely something important to touch on. And then leading us into the last building block that we have here. So, and Karen, you actually put this down and I loved the way that you worded this, but clarity over cleverness. I can't tell you how many times I get an email in my inbox and the subject line is like something so vague. Again, the big one I always see is like, oh, big things are coming, ... And I can't even recognize who's sending the email, what the purpose of the email is. Clarity is so important and it needs to be at the forefront of your email, or people are not going to click on it. People are truly not going to take the time to figure out what you're alluding to.
Yeah, and then like the opposite side of that too, right? So like if you're just trying to exclusively trick them, clickbaity style subject line, then you might get the clicks, you might get the opens, but what information is that really providing you with? Like you don't truly know if that individual is interested in what you have to offer in that email. So I think like again, like if you're looking at the data, the real data that matters is like the people that are opening the email because they know what it is and they want it, and now they're going to take continue to take action. So the vague emails the subject lines can be tricky, and then those like kind of throw you off, like ooh, like curiosity piquing ones can be a little tricky too. So it feels tempting to get super clever and or really creative with your subject lines, but time and time again, it's shown that if they're clear, they're direct, like that's what's going to drive the results you want. Caveat to that, like still test things, right? So like you can do A/B testing with your subject lines. You can trial and see. I mean, you might have like a fun, more playful business that you can tie more creativity and cleverness into your subject lines. So this is not like a blanket statement applies 100% of the time. Like we always come back to the idea of like, let's test this for your audience and see what works for you.
Right, absolutely. And I think too, a lot of this goes back to trust. I feel like so many of our pillars and the things we talk about always go back to trust, but perfect example, I had an email in my inbox this past week, and the subject line was free coffee for a year. So of course I'm going to click on that. Everyone knows I don't play about my coffee. So that was the first email I opened when I sat down in the morning. And the email was kind of just a funny take on like, oh, our prices are so low. If you're, it would feel like you're getting free coffee for a year. And instantly, truly, as minimal as that seemed, I felt like the trust was broken there. I'm like, okay, you got me to read your email with a, kind of alluding, fake, clickbaity subject line. And that does kind of break that trust with the audience. I would be super less likely now to open another email from them, especially with another clickbait kind of title. So think too, even if you're getting those clicks and getting people to open your emails, you don't want to break the trust just for the sake of getting clicks too. Like Karen, like you said, it's about the actions that they take when they open your email. So definitely keep that in mind too. Again, all of this, I feel like all of these pillars just always connect back to building that trust with your audience.
Absolutely. So 2 takeaways from that. 1, don't mess with Lauren's coffee. And 2, if you want her to read your emails, write free coffee for you. I'm just kidding. I'm taking away the wrong things. Yeah.
All these emails that say that. See, that would be a good one for you, Karen, actually. If there's a task that you're going to assign me that, I'm not super thrilled about, you could just make the subject line free coffee.
Clickbaity subject. Well, and I was just thinking when you're talking about that too, like I wish that all of the surveys they do about stuff like this, like surveyed marketers separately. Cause I'm like, are our brains working differently for these? When you were talking earlier about the getting subscribed to a list that you weren't subscribed to, I'm like, are we just more tuned into that and we know like that this isn't something? Because I'm the same way. Like when I get that, I get so annoyed, and rather than just like unsubscribing, a lot of times I will be like spam. And you don't want to be that for anyone, right? Like, because I don't want you to force your information on me. I want to like opt into these things. I already have a little bit of inbox overwhelm, so like I think, yeah. But I'm like, ooh, as marketers, how are our brains wired differently to see these things and react?
I mean, it's like the same kind of idea of like us when we sit down to watch the Super Bowl and we're psychoanalyzing those ads more than anyone. But I agree. And I think too, that's important to note. If your business is a B2B business, again, some of these strategies change a little bit because you are dealing with, people who could see through some of your marketing tactics and kind of have a little bit of a competitive edge when it comes to viewing your things. So definitely something to think about as well there.
Yep.
And so we are going to leave you with a couple takeaways like we always do, and kind of things that you could do right now to audit your email marketing strategy. So kind of thinking, am I sending emails that feel relevant to my audience? Do I have a consistent rhythm, or am I emailing randomly? Again, super important, going back to that consistency. And is my subject line clear enough to make someone want to click? Again, like we said, without being clickbaity, without being too clever. So those are things that you could truly sit down with your list of emails you've spent over the past maybe even month, let's say, and really think about those things and kind of audit that today, even if you just have 10 minutes to put aside.
Yeah, and I'd love to like just really quickly talk about each of those questions too. So for the like, am I sending my emails that feel relevant to my audience? Again, looking at open rate could be a good way to understand that, but even more valuable information or data would be from having conversations with your audience, right? So that could be interviews or that could be surveys, and getting a better sense. We recently did a survey for one of our clients to understand what resources they found most valuable for a particular offering. And there was some good insight in there that we weren't necessarily considering that helped surface the most valuable things and helped us kind of reevaluate, well, do we want to continue doing these things that our audience is saying isn't as much of a priority? So asking your audience is a great way to find out if the content has been relevant for them. And then the consistent rhythm or emailing randomly is kind of like the why behind that too, right? So are you emailing randomly because you actually don't have enough content or updates or information to be providing at that cadence you previously set? Or is it that you need more resources and support? Do you need to align with a marketing agency? Or do you need to hire someone to help you with more of the technical piece? But not just like, hey, am I doing this or am I not? But like, why are you not doing that? And then the subject line, I think we talked about enough, but yeah, making that clear and clickable for sure.
Absolutely. And again, I know a really good marketing agency if anyone ever feels
Tell
like
me,
so aligned.
what is their names?
Brady, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're really good. They love coffee. They're really great. Never send clickbait emails. But again, kind of wrapping up here, all of this to say, we think email is alive and well, especially when it's done correctly. You want to focus on the relevance, the clarity, timing, consistency, and trust. And think of your list as a long-term relationship, not as short-term sales tool. So again, treat your list like a community and not just numbers and not just a way to get clicks.
Yeah, I love that. I love that note because that's truly what we're trying to do, right? Whether your customers purchase from you once or they have to renew with you regularly or they repurchase, sporadically, like it's about I'm, such a stickler for it's about the impact we can have. And if we're trying to make a quick sale, then we lose sight of the fact that we are here to create change as marketers and businesses. And that's why you started your business most likely. Like, you have something to offer the world that's going to make their lives a little bit better. And if we view the email as a digital community that we're nurturing and engaging and continuing to build relationship with, then I really feel like you can't go wrong.
I love that. And that feels like such a nice high note to end on, kind of leaving everyone on a note of optimism and community. I think everyone needs that. So we're looking forward to debunking some more myths with you later on. We're so happy that you guys listened. And again, if you need any help with your email marketing, you know who to call. And we'd love to kind of hear how you're auditing your list or what steps that you're taking to kind of make sure that your email strategy is alive and well.
Love it. Thanks so much, Lauren. This was fun.
Thank you guys. See ya.